Hi, I'm Diann Davisson, your Advanced Certified Grief Recovery Specialist, and I'm going to demonstrate how to do a lost history graph. You'll be receiving a form like this with a line across the paper, and the first entry you're going to put down here is on the left-hand side, your date of birth, and on the extreme right-hand side, today's date. Now, what we're going to do is you're going to go in and fill in all of your major losses first. The ones that were so intensely painful, such as a divorce, a death, a miscarriage, a loss of a child, maybe a health issue, crisis with work, the major losses that you've had here. Once you get done doing that, you're going to go back and fill it in with other types of losses you may have had, and your vertical lines downward will denote the degree of the intensity of the pain. So for the purpose of a loss history chart here, it's all going to be items that are heartbreaking, painful, disappointing, crushing, whatever pain that caused you in your lifetime. Now, I just want to show you my original one that I did as a student. It looks like this. So there might be about 12 entries here. However, for the purpose of demonstration and covering some other items, I have done one that's a little bit longer so I can show how to do these. After you put the date of your birth, the very first entry will be the date of conscious memory. And this is your first date of your memory as a little person, whether you're 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. It could be that special blanket, that toy. It could be anything from your room that you remember it was painted pink or blue. Whatever your memory was at your first conscious memory, it could be good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. That's the first thing you're going to put on your chart here. So on my chart, the first date of conscious memory, I can remember going to preschool, and they would come by and honk the horn, and I did not want to go to preschool. I would run up and hide in the tree. They would coax us down, and we would go to preschool, and the woman there at the entry would say, welcome us, and say, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Open your mouth wide. And I thought that was really creepy and embarrassing. I thought it was creepy then, and I think it's creepy now. But that is my first date of conscious memory. Then the first loss that I can remember was my grandfather Davisson. He was a big, round, jolly guy. And he died, we might have been 9, 10, or 11 years old. And I can remember going to his funeral. It was an open casket. And when I went up to the casket and looked at grandfather Davisson, I yelled out, "That's not my grandfather," because it was like a skeleton in the casket. And again, nobody said anything. Nobody said, "Oh, honey, are you worried? Are you scared? Let's talk about it." We didn't talk about it. So that was my first loss that I can remember. And it was scary. It was really scary. The next one I have is with my twin sister, Darla. And we may be 11 or 12 years old. And the reason I have it here is because Darla and I always fought. We fought like cats and dogs. And not only that, I was the butt of all her jokes. Yes, she was very funny, but I was the butt of them. And the way that made me feel growing up, and I didn't feel love, I didn't feel respected by her, I didn't feel close to her whatsoever. Now, that feelings, those relationships continued all the way until she died. And so instead of writing down every single incident that happened, I do a dotted line here down at the bottom, just showing that that behavior, that feeling that I had with my sister continued throughout our lifetime together. Then the next loss I have is my very best friend, Donnie Stifler, since I was in 7th grade. Probably when we were maybe like freshmen or juniors in high school, her parents get divorced. And back then, parents didn't get divorced back in the early 60s. And I can remember feeling so sad and yet never knowing what to say to her. Because once again, that misinformation that I had always received. Don't talk about it. Be strong. I went ahead and did that. Then a year later, her mom died of breast cancer. Went to her funeral. Once again, didn't talk about it. It was sad. I felt so sad for her. She didn't have her mother, but I didn't know how she felt. We never talked about it. Then the next one I have here is Judy Garland. When I was 16 years old, Judy Garland dies, and I could not believe it. Now, why would I have Judy on my lost history graph? That's because when I was a young child, maybe 9 or 10, a friend of my dad came to our house for Christmas, and he brought the Judy Garland at Carnegie Hall album as a gift to our family. And when I heard her sing, my God, there was something inside of me that just opened up, that I felt these feelings I had never felt inside of me before. I was gone. And so when she died, when I was 16, I was devastated. My heart was broken. I remember feeling very gloomy for a while because Judy and I had big plans for us. And my next loss I can remember that was significant to me was I was a junior in high school, and my beloved PE teacher that we just would have done anything for her. She's the one that kept me on the straight and narrow. She gets a job promotion and she moves from the high school to the college. I was devastated, and I felt like I was abandoned by her. There was never again any conversation whatsoever. She was here today and then went to the college again. Again, stuffing those feelings down. The next loss that I had was I was 17 years old, and my sister had gotten kicked out of both of the high school in our district. Now she was in continuation school, and now she was pregnant. And back then, when you got pregnant, you either was shipped to another state to have a baby and give it up for adoption, or you marry the baby daddy, and that's what she did. And I was just so disgraced. I was embarrassed. It was the very first time I actually saw my daddy cry. And so that made me even more angry at my sister than ever before. I felt she just was so disrupting this family. And then after that, I can remember my very best friend, Dawnine, that I've had since 7th grade. Now we're seniors in high school, tells me 2 days before she leaves that she got a full basketball scholarship back to a college in the Midwest. Again, feeling abandonment, loss of dreams, loss of expectations and hope that I had, that I thought her and I would continue on to college together and play sports. After that, in 1977, my twin sister, identical twin sister, has this really terrible headaches. We thought she was crying wolf because she always did before. This time she wasn't. She ends up in the hospital with a cardiac arrest and dies. To say I was devastated, I couldn't even find words to put around there. I was numb. I was heartbroken. I was in shock. I can remember being very angry at God. And then I have, Darla had been married twice. She was now divorced. She had this one little child named Rusty, 5.5 years old. And the reason I have him on my chart is because every time I would be with him, my heart would just break. It would be everything I could muster up to hold in those feelings so I wouldn't burst out in tears. I felt so sad for him that he didn't have his mommy. And again, those feelings around Rusty continued for another 10 or so years until I could have the maturity of understanding my feelings and my grief that went along with this devastating loss of my twin sister. And then in 1982, Terry and I opened up our real estate office. And, normally you would think that would be a good thing to open an office. And yes, there were very positive things, but for the purpose of a lost history graph, I'm only dealing with issues that were heartbroken, painful, or those intangible losses of our dreams, our expectations of safety, of respect, of security. And so we opened up our real estate office. I talked Terry in getting into real estate. I had been in real estate first, and unfortunately, we just fought. We fought, we fought, we fought. We even went to a therapist, and we still fought. I was a team player. She was an individual player. She was a great worker, but the way we worked together was very different than what I expected, like I had with my best friend Dawnine for all those years. So I felt a loss of my dreams, of my expectations, of how I thought it was going to be, how I thought it was going to be. And then after that, my parents got divorced after 33 years of marriage. And I was so prideful of knowing that my parents were still married after 33 years. When they got divorced, I was shattered. I don't care how old I was, I felt shattered of their divorce. And along with that, my dad left. He had not obviously, but he had a friend, and he basically dumped my mom emotionally onto me. So I was a little angry at my dad. My dad gets married after that to a wonderful lady named Shirley. Then in 1990s, I've pursued a spiritual path. I'm in practitioner class. We take a written exam to pass our tests. I failed the test by maybe 1 or 2 points. Oh my God. I could not believe I did not pass that test. I was so embarrassed. I was so angry at the church. I wanted to go bomb the church before bombing was popular. And I think it was the very first time, I know it was the very first time that I did not succeed at something. And so the next entry I have is 1999. I'm now in ministerial school. I'm starting to work at the hospital as an intern. And Terry and I, my relationship of 21 years has now dissolved. I felt like our glass house was broken. I could feel a loss of, I felt betrayed. I felt a loss of hope, of my dreams, thinking that we were just going to go off into the sunset forever and ever. And that did not happen. I was crushed. And so I moved out of the house. And as you can see, I have a line down here because that relationship with Terry, our time that we did not get along continued for a long time. So Terry and I moved out and we separated. The next loss I have here is the year 2000. My dad's second wife, Shirley, after 20 years, she ends up dying of lung cancer. I was there when she took her last breath. And I really, really liked her. We went on vacations together. She was in our same faith tradition. But I noticed that my line was kind of short. And I think that's because I could not emotionally give her my full heart, because maybe I was feeling betrayed. I would be betraying my mother because my mom did not like her at all. Then in March the 1st, the year 2000, my mom's home burns to the ground. There was nothing left. And it was like, oh shit, what's going to happen now? I was stunned. I was stunned for her and I was stunned for myself. And then about a month later, she had tummy issues. She ends up going to the doctor. She has surgery. And I can remember when the doctor comes down, when they ask you to go to a separate room, it's usually not good news. And he said that they did a hysterectomy and that she did have ovarian cancer. And I was just shocked by that. I could not believe it. And that same day, an hour later, I get a phone call from the School of Ministry letting me know that I did pass my ministerial written exam the first time. So once again, that those mix of those feelings, the deep, deep sadness of my mom's diagnosis, and yet the joyfulness and the release and relief of passing my ministerial tests. And then for those next 6 years that my mom lived, I just spoiled her rotten. And then she ended up in hospice in 2006 for 9 months. My brother flew down from Oregon and was a part of her care team. He was wonderful, so supportive, and we became so much closer together. And I'm thinking, this is so wonderful that I'm going to have this renewed relationship with my brother. My mom dies in 2006. 4 months later, my brother dies of cancer from head to toe. And I just felt like an orphan. I felt lost. I felt lost. Like I really got dealt a bad hand here. And then in the year 2008, gay people could get married. So Terry and I, even though we'd been together all the time after we separated for a while, she had her home, I had my home. We decide that she's going to move in with me. We're going to get married, and hallelujah, we're going to have a new life. Part of that is true, but the reason I have it on my lost history graph is when she moved back in, the pattern of our bickering with each other continued, and it was not, that part was not good. And I was really sad. I felt like a loss of, again, the dreams that I hoped that as she moved back in and we came together and got married, things would change. And then shortly after that, we had a shooting at Long Beach Hospital where I worked. We had a pharmacist tech shoot his supervisor, then the manager, then he took his own life. And I felt a loss of safety, a loss of faith, a loss of trust at a place where I thought was a safe place to work. After that, we realized that at our real estate office, the cute little Kentucky girl that worked for us for 6 years was embezzling money from us. And that felt, again, a loss of trust, being betrayed. And I was very angry at her because we treated her like a daughter. And if she needed the money, we would have loaned her the money. But instead, I had to prosecute. And then in 2012, Terry decides that she is burnt out on real estate. She was not going to do real estate anymore. We talked about what are we going to do with the office. Should we just close the doors and throw away the key? I did not want to do that, so I retired from the hospital. I went back into real estate with the stipulation that I would be doing real estate totally on my own and that she would not be a part of the day-to-day real estate business. She moved up to the Morro Bay area as we had bought a home a year before that up in the Morro Bay area, knowing that this was an area that we would want to retire and we would want to retire to. After that, my dad died the next year. He was 93 years old, and I had anticipated this. He was in hospice, and so I knew that was coming down the line. But that was still a loss. His third wife took wonderful care of him. And then I'm getting ready to retire. I built the real estate company back up. It's doing great. In 2015, I say, okay, I can come up to Morro Bay more full-time instead of going back and forth. I get up here, I'm not doing real estate, and I'm saying, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I was devastated. I was in grief. I was lost. I did not know what I was going to do, and it did not feel good at all. Just devastated. And then after that, we're getting ready to sell our real estate office to the young man that I had hired and groomed and mentored him. He was doing fabulous. And we get hit with 2 large lawsuits around mold issues. We also did a lot of property management. That was a very hard thing for me to shake. I felt my pride was just devastated. I was embarrassed. Here we were paid a lot of money to protect these owners for situations like this, and we ended up in a lawsuit that prevented us from selling the business. That took about 2 years to resolve. The good news is it didn't cost me any money or my business. It did not cost my clients, the owners, any money. It just took a lot of time to unravel it and resolve it. And then after that, I'm up here in beautiful Morro Bay. I'm starting to teach these classes on grief recovery, and I realize I am a big pothead. And that was my big stirb. I was doing it totally unconsciously, just as a friend. Okay, let's go get high. So I stopped doing that cold turkey, cold turkey. And and then the relationship with Terry and I, as I moved up here and we were able to get things worked out a little bit more, and I spoke up and expressed my feelings, the issues between Terry and I really subsided. And I got to tell you, it is so much more peaceful, and that leaves us today's date. Now, the purpose of doing a loss history graph is to look at our losses and see if any of these losses are impeding us from having a day-to-day life that brings us joy and happiness and fulfillment. And again, it's also to look at our patterns. Once you're done with your loss history graph, you're going to go back and you're going to look at any of those items that may have contributed to misinformation, how to deal with grief. Be strong, time will heal all things, replace the loss. And as I shared in my loss history graph, many of those same misinformation that I've received, don't talk about it, be strong, keep busy. We're also going to look too if there's anything in our loss history graph, any illnesses that we may have experienced after a loss. Also, any accidents that we may have had. I know for me with the illnesses, when I opened up the real estate office, I was plagued with ulcers for many, many, many years around that because I was dealing with that stress and I was keeping all those feelings inside. So we have misinformation, we have stirbs, we have illnesses and accidents. They're going to want us to see how that relates to our lost history graph. I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I am here to help you. Be gentle with yourself. You cannot do this wrong, but you need to take the time to do it. Thank you.